Okay, I think let's get started. Welcome everyone to another seminar in the series co-hosted by the Strategic Partnership for Implementation of the Paris Agreement, funded by various bodies in Europe, notably the Commission and the European and the German government, and co-hosted at the Australian end by the Climate and Energy College of the University of Melbourne. My name is Peter Rayner. I'm the academic lead of the college and the kind of academic facilitator for this activity in Australia. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm talking from the unceded land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I acknowledge their elders past, present, and emerging. We're nearing the end of the speaker series, and it's really interesting for us to focus on a kind of couple of positive developments around serious action that we can take around climate. And it's kind of been noted in the past that one of the major barriers for popular involvement is a feeling of helplessness, that the political systems, the financial systems, the production systems are all too large to deal with. So it's really interesting to get a look at some strategies and some developments that really might start to open up possibilities. So it's a delight today to welcome Pourya Salehi to talk about developments in sustainable finance, and in particular on the role of the digitalization of the financial system and how that might open up possibilities. Pourya is beautifully placed to talk about this, having worked with ICLEI and the Global Covenant of Mayors on a whole range of activities around research in sustainable development for cities, and also with a background in urban and land management and in finance. So that kind of leaves him uniquely placed to talk about the role of sustainable finance and its kind of more interesting technical innovations in opening up the possibilities for change. So Pourya, I'll get off video and on mute and hand over to you.
Much appreciated, Peter, for the introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me and having me for this very particular and interesting webinar on digital finance. It's certainly one of the topics that I get thrilled to talk about and learn from others, also share what I'm thinking about this particular area that is actually supporting sustainable development. So basically today we would like to talk a little bit about how crowdfunding and crowdfinancing solutions support long-term funding for sustainability projects at the local level. But before diving into crowdfunding and crowdfinancing, we will be talking a little bit about digitalization and then digital finance, and we can take it from there. So let's just start with a quick definition of basically of the concept. So while digitization is considered as the shift from paper to digital format and the shift from manual to automated process, digitalization is the integration of digital technology into everyday life, changing the way we think, we interact, and we live. So digitalization and digital innovation have the potential to transform the current landscape of basically sustainability and climate action, and they are increasingly considered as key enablers for attaining sustainability goals. Nowadays, more and more scholars believe that in order to leverage this potential to support responses to climate change and sustainable development challenges, digitalization and sustainability should work hand in hand. So basically, we can say that digital innovation has been successfully used in the private sector in areas such as banking, insurance, and entertainment. Perhaps one of the most tangible examples for all of us is Netflix, that perhaps most of us have used it so far, and sort of had a tangible experience and firsthand experience how this area has been changed and impacted drastically. So basically, the digital innovation is offering new services and things that they were not possible in the past, or they were possible at high cost, or they were too time consuming. So observing this potential, more recently, national and subnational governments and relevant stakeholders are trying to harness this wave and define ways to leverage cutting-edge digital technologies to develop creative and unconventional solutions to tackle persistent and emerging climate and sustainability challenges in different levels, different sectors, and perhaps in different thematic areas of sustainability. So let's a little bit think about the bigger picture for a moment. As the world continues to change at an accelerating rate and become increasingly complex, conventional solutions and practices are falling short. From the COVID-19 pandemic to social justice issues, to our climate emergency, and also challenges and issues linked to our natural resources, leaders are being forced to respond to the growing impacts of a widening range of conditions. As a result, leaders, particularly at the subnational and local level, are finding it challenging to match past performance results while adapting to accelerating changes and that they have in hand, and the pathways may no longer be sufficient. And that's exactly why thinking outside the box and moving towards new solutions is no longer a choice, but a necessity. And this is where digitalization and digital innovation come to play. So digital innovation could bring a lot to the table. Firstly, it obviously can enhance the access to data and generate more data for us. And then the increase in data can facilitate increased precision. As an example, reporting and monitoring of sustainability project builds a detailed picture of the current solutions and helps to predict future trajectories. At the city level, local data can localize solutions and make cities far more inclusive and sustainable. Secondly, digital innovation can encourage behavior change in citizens. For example, blockchain technology solutions can incentivize behavior change by rewarding eco-friendly behavior with micro rewards. Let's take the example of EcoCard. That's a digital tool which uses algorithms to calculate the cost of offsetting the emissions from manufacturing and shipping an online order. I assume during the pandemic, many of us had to, make our orders online more often. So they now are offsetting over 5 million pounds of carbon dioxide and have over 3,000 people using Chrome extension. And they are doubling user basically every month. And this is as of early last year. So another area, it's about what digitalization is actually bringing to the table. Perhaps is the fact that it can enhance citizen-centric interface for multiple purposes. This is a form of disruptive leadership as it takes a bottom-up approach. The key features include gathering data from citizens to reflect in real time the functioning of their cities and so on. So enabling communities with projects can contribute to basically these projects being taken up more successfully in cities, as it ensures it accurately meets the needs of the citizens and serves the intended purposes. So incorporating online engagement into the city's existing and proposed projects can support better city strategies for climate change mitigation and adaptation, integrated resource management, and also help ensure projects are appropriate for the communities in which they are being implemented. So now let's take a look at digital finance and digitalization of finance. So basically, a novel application of digital innovation is happening in the area of finance. Digitalization of finance comprises systemic changes to the financial systems aided by digital technology, including changes in business models, products, and services. So digital finance is broadly defined as services delivered through digital processes and infrastructures. In terms of the state of digital finance today, It's been observed that digital finance is changing the existing banking systems. It's impacting every aspect of finance, from access to affordability and availability of financing mechanisms and streams. And it's been proven evidently that digital finance has the potential to enable every nut and bolt of financial processes to be unbundled and commoditized. So changing the financial sector and bringing new players is something that digital financing is offering. And it was not the case before digital innovation was tapping into finance domain. So digital retailers, as an example, and social media platforms are moving into financial services. Just look into Facebook Pay or Apple Card. But particularly in public finance, governments are making investment to digitalize their financial systems. And this is actually what we are observing that is changing the sustainable development landscape. And we are expecting more to happen in the real world, and in both in terms of financing sustainability projects, and in terms of the impact that new streams of financing can create on the ground. So digital financing can help mobilize financial resources, which are key for mobilizing other type of resources towards building more sustainable communities. When thinking about ways of financing sustainability projects, we usually are inclined to think of public funding, multilateral banks, private sector money. But the question is, what about people's money? So basically, emerging alternative funding mechanisms can help finance more sustainability projects. They offer a historic opportunity to overcome shortfalls, gaps, and weaknesses in aligning a new generation of financing instruments, markets, and institutional arrangements with sustainability goals and targets and our shared objectives. So let's take a closer look at the blockchain technology, for example, in the context of digital finance. So blockchain technology holds the potential to unlock new sources of financing and mobilize existing industry pledges to carbon reduction through establishing new financing platforms. A clear objective is to lower the cost of capital for infrastructure projects, along with improved liquidity, transparency, and expanded access to finance. So OECD on that front suggests that a decentralized financing infrastructure could enable the full spectrum of investors to invest directly in sustainable infrastructure through a blockchain-based platform, transforming illiquid assets into tradable digital assets and increasing financing flows for sustainable development. So as an example, take a look at the CBDCs, central bank digital coins. These digital currency issued by central banks, they are widely accessible to public, and they are becoming more and more accessible to public. And obviously, technology utilized will enable public to access central banks' money more easily down the line. Or DeFi, the decentralized finance coins, they are building on a tech stack run on open systems that are heavily reliant on a community of engaged participants, not built on banks, which basically there's a clash in data space, but that's not the area that we want to go into. But one thing that both of these have in common, that they are basically facilitating an expanded access. And again, I repeat that we all know digital financing can help mobilize financial resources, and we all know that financial resources are key for mobilizing other types of resources towards building a sustainable community. And obviously the common streams of funding and financing for sustainable development projects are usually public money, private money, and banks. But still, I believe we need to tap into people's money as well in different forms. So with that, I would like to draw your attention to a report called People's Money by my colleagues at UN Digital Finance Task Force. So a bold move that shows global attention to utilize digital financing to support sustainability is the establishment of the UN Digital Task Force. It was set up in August 2020 as part of a roadmap for financing 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Its mandate is to catalyze and recommend ways to harness digital financing to accelerate the financing of the sustainable development goals. So the task force has focused on how digitalization can support the development of a citizen-centric financial system that supports people's priority collectively. So basically, this the digital UN Digital Task Force is looking into is digital financing to support sustainable development. They are looking into channeling domestic savings into development financing, enhanced financing for small and medium-sized businesses and projects, and also create virtuous trust cycles in public financing, something that is a big challenge, particularly in some given contexts, and ultimately embed the SDGs into financial and capital markets and encourage sustainability consumption. So linked to what we discussed, the colleagues at the UN Digital Task Force has created a short video that I would like to draw your attention.
We're at a fundamental crossroads. Digitalization can advance us more rapidly in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, or it can deepen exclusion, divide us further, increase inequality. The choice is ours. For the first time, digital technology can put economic power into the hands of people, the people that own today's global financial resources. What if every citizen was empowered to make financial choices that support the SDGs and was able to ensure that every last dollar was spent on what really matters to them, family, community, their country, and the planet? Let's put citizens in the driving seat by enabling them to use their savings to finance their long-term development. Increasingly, mobile platforms and data analytics are bringing sophisticated financial services to mass markets. Governments are digitalizing public finance, whilst a third of US public equity trades are now being carried out by computer-managed funds.
Digital technologies, which are revolutionizing financial markets, can be a game changer in reaching our shared objective.
So I assume the video decided to stop before I complete my invitation to watch this video, but I hope you enjoyed that. And I think that was quite a strong message, particularly from UN Secretary General, on how important is digital financing, how it can support sustainable development and put citizens at the heart of decisions made by local governments. So now I would like to also discuss a little bit crowdfunding and crowdfinancing, that we would like to focus a little bit more today and understand what is the difference, how we can define them, and basically how we can leverage these concepts toward improving and promoting further sustainability in our communities. So crowdfunding is the use of small amounts of capital from many individuals to back or finance a new business venture. Crowdfunding makes use of the easy accessibility of vast networks of people through social media and crowdfunding websites to bring backers or investors and entrepreneurs together. And we have also reward-based crowdfunding, such as Kickstarter, that refers to backers who receive a reward after donating to an entrepreneur's campaign on a portal site during a limited period of time. when we discuss crowdfinancing or equity crowdfunding, such as Rock the Post or Seeders, refers to investors making a monetary investment in exchange for an equity stake in an issuer's company through an intermediary site. So again, as said by the UN Secretary General, digital technologies which are revolutionizing financial markets can be a game changer in reaching our shared objectives. And yes, citizens are the ultimate owners of the world's income and wealth. Tens of billions of decisions every day determine what and how we produce and consume today and into the future. So in principle, citizens, $130 billion in daily purchases should reflect their informed choices. And citizens are part of wider macro systems, so their choices affect the changes. On the other hand, shifting local government's role from service provider to community enabler is necessary to be able to cope with the increasing complexity in the system that we discussed earlier. So when we look into these facts, at the same time, we can draw this conclusion that when it comes to financing sustainability projects, local governments need to look into innovative solutions, particularly those that give the center stage to citizens. In line with this thinking, local governments are and can be enablers for taking citizens' fintech initiatives, such as digital technology-based crowdfunding, to the required scale and can help communities move towards becoming more sustainable. So digital financing can be deployed to create a win-win scenario for citizens and local governments. Digital finance unlocks new sources of finance, such as engaging more citizens in crowdfunding and trading. Currently, digital financing to mobilize citizen savings to invest in projects is considered extremely cutting edge. We're all aware of it, and that's considered very new, but it's certainly becoming a key part of future landscape of in finance area, particularly public finance. So how about we take a look at some examples from green bonds as examples of digital finance, and see how digital finance is enabling green bonds to sort of take a bigger cut and support further sustainability and sustainability transition in our local communities. So basically, local governments or their agencies can issue green bonds to fund their sustainability projects. These green bonds don't need to necessarily be basically on digitalized platforms. A green bond can operate as a normal bond, which is a debt that will be paid back depending on the characteristics of the bond with interest. So these can be made more attractive, as an example, through different incentives such as, tax exemptions or tax reductions. But obviously, green bonds issued based on digital platforms are basically receiving more attention and showing more success to achieve the set objectives by the local governments. Looking into the Gothenburg, the city that was the first city in the world to issue green bonds, more than 75% of the proceeds from the green bonds issued between 2013 and 2015 are now being used by the city to fund climate change projects that promote the transition to sustainability. Project examples include mitigation of climate change, including investments in low carbon and clean technologies, such as energy efficiency and renewable energy programs and projects. And the other one is adaptation to climate change, including investments in climate resilient growth, or also to a smaller extent, up to a maximum of 20% projects that are related more broadly to sustainability rather than directly related to climate change. although climate change was the key, basically climate action was the key objective of issuing these green bonds, but we see that about 20% of the funding collected through this this solution is being spent on other sustainability projects in their jurisdictions. So who were the green bonds issued to? A leading example of national municipal bonds funding agencies in Europe is Kommunivest in Sweden. I was set up in 1986. Kommunivest is basically AAA rated and borrows using bonds. It lends the funds to 260 local authorities to fund projects such as roads and renewable energies. And in September 2013, the Swedish city of Gothenburg issued a 6-year green bond to fund public transport, water management, energy, and waste management projects. This raised 50 million euro, and just knowing that that was the first, application of such solution, that was quite a success. And perhaps one of the interesting points about this program was it was oversubscribed. So this shows that there is an appetite in the public, and if local governments could use this type of solutions in a contextualized but timely way, the chance of success is quite high. Other example of crowdfunding for sustainable development, we can look into West Berkshire Council in the UK. But beforehand, I would like to draw your attention to this fact that digital finance based on fintech and blockchain is already applied to support sustainability and climate action in many projects in many regions. Crowdfunding and blockchain tokens have been used to finance various projects, including cross-sectoral initiatives in the context of climate adaptation and mitigation. There's a report by OECD that suggests digital financing based on fintech and blockchain technology, in particular crowdfunding that we discussed, has emerged as an important source of funding. Fintech-based finance efforts have already been applied in various countries, such as United States and obviously Australia, particularly in West Australia. But it may come to our mind that, oh, that's mainly for developed countries, for the global north, for the West, and it's a very West-centered approach, but that's not true. There are evidence that we have quite a number of successful applications of this solution in many developing countries, from Philippines to Tanzania, case of Tubao as an example in Philippines, or Ngomai in Tanzania, or many other countries in global south. Ghana comes to my mind as well. So community municipal bonds and investments have the potential to provide capital on terms which are equal or better than the public works loan board, basically. And this is not by me, this is by the Ministry of Local Authorities and Capital Programs in the UK. So this is a borrowing amount potential for 100%, although local authorities about £1 million have not yet been tested in 2020. By 2020. So the local governments associations report on financing green ambition cities. Basically, they cite the West Berkshire and Swindon councils in the UK as examples of successful implementation these type of crowdfunding solutions for sustainability projects, mainly CMBs and CMIs. So an example of citizen fintech initiative is the West Berkshire's plan to go carbon neutral by 2030. West Berkshire Council in the UK, like 2/3 of UK councils, have declared a climate emergency and set ambitious ambitions to become net zero for their region. And this will require billions of low carbon investment over the coming decade. However, council will struggle to meet net zero targets while maintaining frontline services without new sources of borrowing, non-repayable capital, and the active participation of residents. Therefore, they're using community municipal investments, CMIs, and these CMIs are basically green bonds issued by a council corporate body and administrated by a regulated digital crowdfunding platform. So this is the core message, that a municipality is using a regulated digital crowdfunding platform to sort of collect investments from citizens in the form of CMIs. So local residents and general public investors purchases the bonds, basically directing investor capital immediately and with high visibility toward delivery of local net zero infrastructure projects. Working with the platform, community municipal investments also open a new communication channel between the council and residents about the urgency of the climate emergency and council's role in delivering net zero projects. This project was launched in the summer of 2020 and met its £1 million target ahead of the close date, which suggests community municipal investments are a simple and low-risk mechanisms for diversifying borrowing sources. And it would not be feasible without having a digital crowdfunding platform. When it comes to digitalization, and I really would love to highlight a sentence that, like, digitalization, digital innovation in the area of sustainable development, even I would take one step more and talk about smart solutions and smart cities agendas. They are all tools, not the end. They are not the goals. But how we use them to achieve our goals matters. And these are proven and successful examples of how best we can use digitalization, digital finance in particular, approaches, and even being more specific, digital crowdfunding platform to enhance sustainability in a given jurisdictions. So there are currently 404 councils across the UK, and over the course of the last 5 years, they have borrowed an average of £5 billion a year in aggregate. And 270 of these councils have declared a climate emergency and have local net zero strategies in place, including investments plans. Calculations suggest that CMIs could help to raise as much as £3 billion if taken up by all by all local authorities in England. Within 5 years, it's responsible to estimate that CMIs, it's sort of reasonable to estimate that CMIs could be responsible to provide and could provide up to 5% of all UK's council borrowing, equating to roughly £250 million of lending per year. So, available data shows there is 3.3 billion pound of investable wealth in the UK, including defined contribution pensions and basically general financial assets. Although not all of the wealth will match the risk return profile of CMIs, the PCAN report found that 73% of the UK savers and investors were interested in the CMI's product. And that's, to me, that was quite surprising, that something that is considered somehow new for the public, people, almost 3/4 of people are showing interest to put their savings into CMIs. This number increases to 90% for those self-identify as ethical investors, and equates to around 8 million UK residents. So given this evidence base, a conservative estimate would be that almost 0.25% of that 3 trillion pound available could match the CMI profile that we are looking into. So this would equate to a potential total retail market size for local climate bonds of around 9 billion pounds. A powerful conclusion from the success of the CMIs to date is a value to councils in aligning net zero strategies with local investor motivations. So again, just how we look into this is like, there are some potentials for investing. There is a proven interest from public side. There are some examples of already successful application of this. There is a huge need for collecting and sort of generating funds to enable local governments to meet their net zero targets in the UK. And just like we are exploring this case of UK to showcase that how these CMIs could really come in handy and open up a new stream of financing of sustainable development projects and help cities, communities, and local governments to achieve their net zero targets, which is extremely important both for their local level, for their jurisdictions, and globally. So, so the UK's first 2 CMIs cases demonstrate that they can begin to improve attitudes towards the council among local people. By harnessing the power of local government and aligning with net zero, local net zero projects, CMIs provide a simple and low-risk way to connect the financial and non-financial ambitions of local residents. So CMIs are seen as an accessible way for people to participate in supporting local net zero strategies who otherwise would be reluctant to engage in deliberative public forums. So again, you see that like this can also, apart from financing aspect of it, this can also open up a new communication channel and ensure that we can provide a space for citizens to not only share their voices, but also can deliberately decide where their savings go and sort of support what type of action and activity at the local level that hopefully can improve the quality of life in their jurisdiction. So all in all, we already know that the crowdfunding and crowdfinancing leads to increased engagement of citizens and can generate generate a constituent excitement as they engage directly with public policy issues and are empowered to take an active role in solving sustainability issues. This is particularly a very important conclusion to draw, that knowing that municipalities and local governments are shifting, their role is shifting, some of them proactively, some of them reactively, from a service provider to community enabler. It seems that these new streams of approaches of digital finance to unlike new streams of financing for sustainable development is very much in line with this shift in their role. And obviously this can further engage community and citizens, residents into decision-making processes at the local level. So we spoke about the case of Gothenburg in Sweden, and we also spoke about the case of West Berkshire and the UK councils. I was trying to squeeze it, all the information in this limited time that we have for this webinar. But obviously, these are very strong cases that we can look into their replications. But then again, this challenge, I quite often receive this question of like, oh, that's very much global north approach. So I would like to take a couple of minutes to also talk about a couple of examples from global south as well. So the case of Bangladesh is an example. The Bangladesh Pathfinder Initiative plans to use mobile payment platforms to aggregate small savings from various individuals to drive mega funds for specific SDGs. Please note that we are talking about the Bangladesh context. So domestic savers could choose SDGs projects from which they would benefit. The approach could deliver significant reductions in the cost of capital and economic multiplier effects as dividends flow to poorer Bangladeshi citizens. So domestic savers would be able to choose which SDG project they want to invest in simple terms, such as particular roads or bridges, not only in the sector, but also particular road they can choose, or sanitation systems or hospitals, giving them the benefit of investing in improvements to their own area, which will also pay back in savings of time and money and improved standard of living and ultimately the quality of life in their own area. Pooled savings would then be used to finance much needed SDG related projects that generate dividends. Investments in local infrastructure will also need to overcome challenges of corruption and lack of trust, obviously. So technology solutions such as blockchain, together with public transparency, offer the potential to improve the effectiveness and accountability in the use of funds. So we see that these examples are also being taken up in global south, but at the same time, there are some challenges that is not necessarily linked to the digital finance approaches, but digitalization could offer solutions. And perhaps this example of blockchain, which has been suggested as one of the ways to tackle this trust issue in many contexts, could come in handy and could support scaling up these initiatives and these approaches further. Or look into the case, a case in Kenya. Akiba is a government of Kenya issued a retail bond that seeks to enhance financial inclusion for economic development. Money raised from Akiba is basically dedicated to infrastructural development projects. But then again, they use these digital platforms to collect these fundings to support sustainable infrastructural development in their jurisdictions. So all in all, the most important thing, apart from opening up a new streams of funding and financing sustainable development projects for the local governments, is the connections with citizens and community engagement and co-creation. So if local governments look into co-identifying the challenges, and you're just like looking a little bit from decision-making processes and how put citizens at the heart of this, and what is the opportunity for local governments. So basically here it is, if local governments can look into co-identifying the challenges in the context of adaptation and mitigation particularly, with citizens, followed by co-defining strategies and ultimately co-developing projects with them, then they can better ensure citizens buy in for their projects, as it creates a sense of ownership for the ownership of the project for the citizens. And then therefore, local governments can leverage that momentum, aligned with the opportunity that digital finance tools are offering to mobilize their citizen savings to invest in and finance long-term adaptation and mitigation projects. So with this, I just wanted to wrap up both the message that I wanted to convey in this context and in this webinar, but also show how this process could be well designed by local governments to ensure that their citizens and residents would be more willing to mobilize their own savings to invest in projects that could affect their own livelihood, their own quality of life, and at the same time enable the local governments to tackle the sustainability challenges in their local context. For the interest of time, I just put a pause here, and I would be happy to continue the conversation with Peter and the audience if they have any questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much indeed for that. A really kind of optimistic horizon scan of some possibilities that aren't really future, they're really here. There are things that are happening now and things that we could expand on now. I'm happy to take questions from the chat. I've got a couple of questions that I'll ask just to open up things that occurred to me on the way through. One is actually a speculation, and it goes to a seminar we had earlier in the series where there was kind of a concern about the correct scale for financing activities towards the SDGs. And I speculate, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts about this, that these approaches, these tools, might open up financing at scales that are too small for large institutions to back on their own, even for the sort of the significant development authorities and banks and so on. And that in fact, there's probably a great deal of low-hanging fruit, if you like, around improvements towards the SDGs that are relatively small, but at the moment can't get the kind of microfunding, the small amounts of capital they need. Can you comment on kind of what scale you think will be the most effective, the most attractive, both for investors and for the scale of projects that we put up?
Thank you so much, Peter. That's actually a very legit question, and this was also something that came up quite a few times when I was developing my PhD thesis around using basically blockchain-based platforms to fund sustainability projects at the community level. So here's the deal. There is no, based on my findings and my knowledge, there is no correct scale as a blueprint. It really depends on the context that we are talking about and the type of activity that we have in mind. I think if we look into the fact that these are the tools that enables us to do something, not actually the end, we already have the answer. So when we are looking into an activity, an initiative, or a program, if it's at the neighborhood level, fine, that can work. We have the example of crowd financing, the basically water service at a very small scale in Philippines. And we have the case for a region that they are using these approaches to finance their sustainability actions. What is most important is like to look into that particular activity, initiative, or the program, and consider who is being impacted into what a scale, and then look into the buy-ins of the public and also the private sector. And if that aligns, if there is, if there are enough incentives for private sector and for the public to contribute and to come into the game, then that would be successful. But in terms of the scale that we define, I particularly don't think like it's particularly for very small scales. But I certainly agree that we yet do not have enough evidence and enough experience globally to use this type of approaches for very big scales. But I certainly think this would be feasible for from regional level, subnational level to the neighborhood level. Again, depending on the context and characteristics of the jurisdiction and the community in question, and the type of action that we are considering to sort of basically collect funding and drive finance to implement that activity or that project.
Yeah, great. It's actually good to know that there's not a kind of restriction on the unlikely scales. And the other question I've got is probably a very common one whenever these kinds of vehicles turn up, which is the question of trust. And I'm not so concerned about whether these arrangements are reliable so much as what do you think is required to convince people that they're reliable? Is this simply a generation growing up within the digital finance world that don't need to be convinced? Or is there work to do for us to make sure that people are comfortable with these potential new arrangements?
So here's the deal. I think that's a combination of both. Like when we are talking about any type of application of digital innovation, we obviously need a certain level of digital literacy. We obviously need the infrastructure in place, and we need that mindset in the end users, right? So I certainly think that the new generation, the generation who's more comfortable with any type of digital application, would be more willing to use digital finance approach as opposed to the older generation. That's I think we all can agree with that. But that doesn't mean that the older generations are not willing to use this approach. And when it comes, but obviously one of the very well documented challenges and issues is a matter of trust, right? Trust in the process and trust into the players who are using these solutions. Again, this is something very much context dependent, and we cannot say, oh, like this trust can be handled by the existing offerings of digital innovation. Blockchain technology, as an example, like this is addressing trust, because basically you don't need to trust anyone, and blockchain is designed in a way that secures basically the transactions and ensures that everything is in order, and the chance of corruption, the chance of cheating on the system is extremely low. That being said, there are still some concerns in the public, as we can see, when it comes to application of that. So while this is a downside of it, I really would like to take this example I shared with you 2 years ago. In Europe, issuing green bonds based on blockchain and based on digital platforms by the banks were very limited. Just perhaps mostly they were sort of pilot projects. Today, there is a rivalry between banks, and banks are sort of competing in terms of issuing those digital green bonds. So this shows that this interest is growing also from public side and obviously private sector, that banks are now competing, at least within the context of Europe, to issue the green bonds.
Yep, also shows things are changing pretty fast. Hand back to Angela to see if there are any questions in the chat that we might pass on. We only have a couple of minutes, but if there are any questions.
There are not at this stage.
Yep. In that case, I can ask kind of one more final, which is really a long-term speculation on where do you think this might look in 10 or 20 years? Do you think we have the tools in place now to make work what we have to, and it's simply a case of implementing, or are there new developments around the kind of structural or even technical arrangements that we need to spin this up?
Thanks a lot, Peter. I was hoping that this question would come up. So here's the thing. Digital innovation in general is changing quite fast, right? A few years ago, like blockchain was not really that known among the public. And nowadays, as an example, we see that a lot of the public saving in some given context are going towards digital coins, right? I'm not necessarily a fan of them, but I see that now it's you know, a rival market for some other markets that we have. So we can certainly expect more advancements and new things in this arena. But what and I don't know what it would be, but what I am 100% sure is that both in terms of the existing and established streams of financing, from private funding to private sector finance, public finance, they will be heavily based on digital technology in 10 years or so. And then also these new streams of funding, such as citizens investment, would get a bigger cut and bigger share when it comes to financing sustainability projects at the local level. But we certainly would need more infrastructure, more knowledge, and more regulations in place, with more examples, with high replication potentials that other cities and countries could replicate. But I would, that's my personal opinion, might be mistaken. But I believe that in 1 decade, digital finance will take certainly the center stage when it comes to financing sustainability projects.
Great, right. That sounds optimistic. Well, thanks very much again. That's a kind of really important trace through this kind of emerging opportunity that we've got around changing things really from the bottom up, which is, as we pull towards the end of the series, is a pretty optimistic look. So thanks again for that presentation. And just to note for those still on, we have one more seminar left in the series, which is the launch of a fairly major piece of research that's been done between, or particularly at the Australian end, which is essentially a detailed look at the comparative uptake of building efficiency and appliance and energy efficiency standards around the construction and particularly residential industries in Australia and Europe. One of the things we were kind of tasked to do from the beginning, and it's a fairly significant piece of work looking at what's an extremely complicated regulatory space. So that's being launched on Thursday night. Have a look at the website for that. And apart from that, I'd love to thank Pourya again for a great presentation.
Also, I would like to thank the Australian German Climate and Energy College for inviting me. Thank you, Peter and Angela, for coordinating this. And I'm looking forward to other webinars and seminars under this college. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thanks again.